If I told you that the real reason men no longer approach women has almost nothing to do with fear, confidence, or even rejection, would you believe me? Because what I'm about to explain is something most men quietly feel but never say out loud, and something most women sense but rarely acknowledge. It's a truth hidden beneath years of changing culture, shifting expectations, emotional exhaustion, and a growing disconnect between how men want to show up and how they're allowed to show up. And once you hear it, you may never look at modern dating or human connection in general the same way again. So before we dive in, let's take a breath, relax the shoulders, and explore this with calm honesty, like two old friends sharing life experience without judgment. Men have stopped approaching women, not because they don't want love, not because they don't find women attractive, and not because they've lost interest in companionship, but because approaching a woman today feels like stepping into a world where the rules keep changing, and where the consequences feel heavier than ever. Many men describe it like this: it's not worth the risk anymore. But what does risk really mean? Risk of embarrassment, risk of disrespect, risk of being misunderstood, or the risk of stepping into a situation where a simple hello can be misinterpreted as something harmful? The truth is, it's all of the above, layered on top of years of personal experiences, stories from friends, and messages from society. Take a moment to think about the world men grew up in versus the world they stand in now. For men over 40, 50, 60, approaching a woman used to be something simple. You could smile, say hello, maybe compliment her, and whether she accepted or declined, it remained human, polite, normal, a moment of connection. But over the last 2 decades, dating culture has transformed into something far more complicated. Approaches are judged, intentions are analyzed, and the natural dance between men and women has been replaced with scripted rules and unspoken social fears. Men feel they're walking into a situation where they can be labeled creepy for simply expressing interest, and women feel exhausted by attention that often feels overwhelming or low quality. Both sides are tired, but they experience that exhaustion differently. The truth many modern women don't realize is that men are not avoiding them out of indifference. They're withdrawing out of self-protection. They're tired of playing a game where they don't know the rules. They're tired of feeling unwanted, unappreciated, or instantly judged before they even open their mouth. And they're especially tired of pretending they don't care, when deep down, most men want exactly what women want: connection, softness, emotional safety, and partnership. But the space required for those things has become harder to enter. In Dr. John Gray's research, the same author behind Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, he explains something very important. Men thrive when they feel successful in relationships. When a man feels that his efforts are welcomed, appreciated, or reciprocated, he becomes more open, more generous, more confident. But when a man repeatedly feels punished, dismissed, or criticized for expressing basic interest, the emotional cost becomes too high. Over time, the easiest and safest option becomes silence. Many men say, "Why would I approach someone who might instantly assume the worst about me?" And this isn't bitterness, this is emotional fatigue. In a world where many women say they want a confident man who takes the lead, the irony is that society often punishes the very behavior they claim to desire. Men see viral videos of women mocking men who approach them. They hear stories of women acting annoyed or irritated when a man politely expresses interest. And whether these moments represent all women or not, they influence men deeply. Because embarrassment may last minutes, but humiliation lasts years. Another factor is technology. Dating apps were meant to make connection easier, but they ended up shifting power dynamics in a way nobody predicted. For women, apps created an environment where attention is endless. A woman can get validation without stepping outside her home. For men, apps created the opposite effect, an environment where they feel replaceable, invisible, or constantly competing. When men are swiping endlessly with no results, approaching in real life becomes even more intimidating because they've been conditioned to expect rejection before they even try. It's not that they're afraid of women, they're afraid of feeling invisible again. Let's bring this back to real-life experience. A man in his 60s told me, "I used to approach women with confidence. Now I feel like even a friendly greeting is unwelcome." He didn't say this with resentment. He said it with sadness. He loved the old world where kindness was normal and interest wasn't threatening. But he feels like that world is fading. Another man in his 40s said, "Women assume you want something from them. I just wanted conversation." These stories aren't about blaming women. They're about understanding the emotional climate men now live in. And on the other side, women often say, "Where are all the good men? Why don't men approach anymore? Why don't men pursue?" Many women genuinely want to be approached, especially by mature, respectful men. But the challenge is that men can't tell the difference between a woman who welcomes connection and a woman who will react negatively. So, they play it safe, they stay quiet, they avoid risk. Not because they lack courage, but because courage alone is not enough in a world where being misunderstood can have real emotional or social consequences. Let's go deeper. According to psychologist Dr. Deborah Campbell, humans naturally avoid situations that trigger emotional pain pathways, including rejection, embarrassment, and social exclusion. These triggers are especially strong in men because men are often taught their value is measured by how women respond to them. Every rejection feels like a failure. Every cold reaction feels like a wound to their sense of worth. Over time, to protect themselves, men stop trying altogether. Not because they want to be alone, but because they can no longer endure the emotional toll of trying. This leads to an interesting shift happening today. Men are turning inward. They're focusing on personal growth, hobbies, work, and emotional independence, not as a rejection of women, but as a safer alternative to unpredictable interactions. Men are learning to give themselves the peace they used to hope a relationship would bring. But this internal focus has a side effect. When a man becomes self-sufficient, he becomes less motivated to take emotional risks. Why risk rejection when peace is already in your hands? Another reason for this shift is something called hypercompetitiveness, a term used in modern relationship psychology to describe a dating environment where everyone feels they must compete for attention. Social media intensifies this. Women compare themselves to unrealistic standards. Men feel outclassed by influencers and high-status men women interact with online. Self-worth becomes a battle, not a baseline. When a man feels he can't measure up, he opts out. But here is the deeper truth, something almost no one talks about. Men haven't stopped approaching women because they don't care. They've stopped because the emotional reward no longer outweighs the emotional risk. Approaching used to feel exciting. Now it feels like stepping into a courtroom where they're being judged before they even speak. And men, especially older men, long for something simple: warmth, kindness, connection without complication. They want a woman to look at them and see a human being, not a threat, not a joke, not a stereotype. Just a man with a good heart. And perhaps the most painful part is this. Many men still want to approach. They still notice beauty. They still feel admiration. They still feel that spark that says, "I want to get to know her." But right as that spark flickers, a second voice appears. "Be careful. Don't bother her. Don't create a problem. Stay quiet." And so, the moment dies before it even begins. What many women don't realize is that most men aren't pulling away because they dislike women. They're pulling away because they're afraid of doing the wrong thing, in a world where the rules have changed faster than they can adapt. Women today often say they want authenticity, honesty, emotional sensitivity, and initiative. But men receive a very different message when they look at how modern interactions play out in real life. The truth is, most women don't want just any man approaching them. They want the right man approaching them. And men know this. Men have always known this. But in the past, approaching was how you discovered whether you were the right man. Now men feel like they're expected to know in advance, and that uncertainty alone is enough to keep them silent. This is the emotional contradiction at the center of modern dating. Women want to feel desired, but they also want to feel safe. Men want to show desire, but they also want to avoid causing discomfort. Both desires are reasonable, both are human. But somewhere along the way, the bridge between those two needs collapsed, and without that bridge, what used to be a natural moment of connection now feels like a risk, not just for men, but for women too. Imagine this: a man sees a woman he finds interesting. She seems kind, relaxed, someone he might actually connect with. In the old world, he could simply approach her with a smile and say, "Hi, how are you?" no pressure, no expectations. Just human connection. Today, before he even takes a step, his mind fills with questions. Will she think I'm bothering her? Will she be offended? Will she tell her friends I'm creepy? Will she record me on her phone to post online? These thoughts may seem exaggerated to some, but they were real fears men carry now. Not because women created them, but because the culture around dating magnified them. This new reality has caused men to change their behavior in ways women rarely see. Many men wait for eye contact, a smile, or a clear signal before approaching, but those signals rarely come because women today have been conditioned to appear uninterested for their own protection. Women are told to keep their guard up, to avoid giving mixed signals, to appear strong and independent, to not seem too available. So what happens? Men wait for a sign that never appears, and women assume men don't have the courage to approach. Meanwhile, both sides interpret the silence as disinterest, when in reality it's simply fear meeting fear. According to relationship expert Esther Perel, one of the biggest challenges in modern connection is that people are more guarded than ever. Everyone is trying to protect themselves from being hurt, rejected, embarrassed, or taken advantage of. But the irony is that in protecting ourselves from connection, we also deny ourselves the possibility of connection. Men withdraw to avoid misjudgment. Women appear closed off to avoid unwanted attention. The result is loneliness dressed up as independence. The emotional truth is this: men want to be welcomed, not tolerated. They want to feel safe expressing interest. They want to feel that their masculinity is something good, not something suspicious. They want to be appreciated for taking the risk, not criticized for it. Women often underestimate how deeply men value appreciation. A simple, warm response, even if it's a gentle rejection, can restore a man's confidence for years. But a cold or harsh reaction can shut him down for just as long. Let's look at a real-life example. A man in his early 50s told me, "I approached a woman politely in a cafe. I just wanted to compliment her book. She rolled her eyes like I was trash. I walked out feeling like I never wanted to approach a woman again." He wasn't angry, he was hurt. And one hurtful moment often overshadows dozens of positive interactions. Men rarely tell these stories publicly because society expects them to man up and pretend things don't bother them. But inside, these moments build walls. Women, on the other hand, often share the opposite stories, times when they felt uncomfortable, when they received unwanted attention, or when men approached them disrespectfully. And their stories are just as real, just as valid, and just as emotionally impactful. These stories make women cautious, guarded, or unapproachable. Not because they dislike men, but because they've learned to protect themselves from emotional or physical harm. So now we have two groups of people walking around with invisible emotional bruises, hoping for connection but fearing the process required to create it. Psychologist Dr. Harriet Lerner explains that relationships fall apart when both sides wait for the other to make the first move. Whether that move is emotional openness or physical initiative, men wait for a signal that women aren't giving. Women wait for confidence men aren't expressing. And the silent gap between the two grows wider every year. But here's the surprising twist. Even though men have stopped approaching women in public, it's not because they've stopped wanting to. In fact, according to several relationship studies, desire for connection hasn't dropped at all, just the courage to act on it. So what's the real reason men have stopped approaching women? It's this. Men no longer feel emotionally safe approaching women. Not physically unsafe, emotionally unsafe. And emotional safety is the foundation of every healthy interaction, whether romantic or friendly. When men feel they will be respected, they step forward. When they feel they will be judged or rejected harshly, they step back. It's not fear of women, it's fear of humiliation. But here's where things get interesting. Despite all of this, there is a path back to connection. And it begins with something incredibly simple. Kindness, not flirtation, not effort, not boldness, just kindness. Kindness is the signal that breaks through fear. It's the thing that makes a man breathe easier, smile more, and open up again. When women treat men with warmth, even in rejection, men often say they feel encouraged to keep trying. When women respond with coldness, even unintentionally, men say they feel like shutting down completely. For older men, especially those in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, kindness carries even more weight. At that age, men aren't interested in games, competition, or drama. They want peace, companionship, respect, and emotional comfort. They're not approaching women to impress them. They're approaching to connect with them. And connection requires softness from both sides, not just one. Another important factor is that many men today feel like they're expected to be perfect. Perfect confidence, perfect timing, perfect approach, perfect wording, and perfection is impossible. Men overthink everything because they feel like a single wrong step could be misinterpreted. But women don't realize that sometimes their facial expressions, body language, or tone can unintentionally discourage men who already feel unsure. A woman might just be tired or distracted, but a man interprets it as rejection or unwelcomeness. This isn't women's fault, it's the result of living in a world where we've been taught to fear each other instead of understanding each other, where we analyze intentions instead of allowing them to unfold naturally, where we assume negativity instead of assuming humanity. And yet, underneath all of this chaos, men and women still want the same things they always wanted: companionship, warmth, trust, and someone who sees them with kindness. What's the solution? How do men start approaching again? And how do women start welcoming again? It starts with small shifts, not grand changes. When a woman softens her expression, men feel safer. When a man approaches respectfully, women feel more open. When both sides treat each other like human beings instead of threats or expectations, connection becomes possible again. A simple smile can be the difference between silence and a conversation that changes someone's life. Men also need to understand that not every negative reaction is about them. Some women are guarded because of past pain, some are distracted, some are shy, some are unsure. Approaching with respect rather than expectation creates a safe space for both sides. Women, in turn, can understand that many men approach with sincerity, not ego. Most men are not trying to intrude, they're trying to connect. If modern dating has a weakness, it's that we've forgotten the softness required to build trust. We treat interactions like transactions instead of shared human moments. But beneath everything, beneath the fear, the pride, the misunderstandings, connection is still possible. Men haven't stopped wanting women. Women haven't stopped wanting men. They've just stopped knowing how to show it. And maybe that's the truth modern women can't hide from anymore, and the truth men can no longer deny. Both sides are hurting, both sides are cautious, and both sides secretly want the same thing: to feel safe in each other's presence again. If we can acknowledge that, even quietly, then maybe men will start approaching again, and maybe women will start welcoming them again. Because deep down, no matter how society changes, human hearts never stop longing for each other.